Wayne Neyens celebrates his 100th birthday. Monster Bash confirmed as the third remake. Team Pinball revealed their first game.
Hi, and welcome to Pinball Magazine and Pinball News' free monthly audio podcast in which we discuss the pinball news of last month. My name is Jonathan Houston.
And I'm Martin Ayub. And we're here to talk about what happened during the wonderful month of July 2018.
Right.
And despite it being the middle of summer and a time when traditionally not very much happens, actually quite a lot happened, didn't it, Jonathan?
I was looking at what we need to discuss, and I was impressed with what quite a long list it is. And since many people prefer short podcasts, let's not get into depth too much, but just go with the headlines and then see how it goes. And let's try to keep this one under 2 hours, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That suits me, and I'm sure it suits everyone listening. Okay, so let's dive straight in with the very first headline then. Wayne Neyens with his 100th birthday.
Yes, that was July 29th, and I'm very pleased to say that, well, first of all, Wayne celebrated his birthday. He was in the company of quite a few pinball enthusiast friends. Some people from the Pacific Pinball Museum in Alameda came down. Will White came down. I called Wayne on his birthday to congratulate him, and I talked to Will White for a little bit, who was very impressed with the preview that I sent of Pinball Magazine number 5. I sent that to Wayne Neyens so he could see that what I have been working on, and Wayne was very impressed. He was like, wow, it's like a book. I'm not kidding. And Will White said the same, and I think what Wayne told me, that everybody was just very enthusiastic about the book, and I should be expecting a couple of orders from people who were visiting the party. So
great. And was that a pre-production preview then, or,
yes.
or was it just the article about, or just a section about Wayne?
Well, that's the majority of the magazine anyway. But basically, I printed like the cover story, the part done by Gordon Hesse, and the part done by me. There's 2 parts to the cover story, and that was like 250 pages, something like that. Most of the side articles I did not include, and this was just a basically I went to a copy shop, so it's black and white photocopies printed on 2 sides, and threw a plastic wrapper around that, and that was it, you know. So, but it looked looked very nice. Usually I make a test print like that to see how photos come out when you look at them printed on paper, and I still need to do that once I have all the side articles done, and I'm still working on a few, but we're getting there. And the thing is, well, life keeps happening and interfering with my deadlines.
Yeah, life, eh? Who needs it? But going back to Wayne, then he had a pretty good celebratory party there. By the looks of it, I saw some pictures from the event where there was a nice, really excellent, actually, birthday cake presented to him.
And I think he got an award from the Pacific Pinball Museum.
He did indeed, yeah.
With
I was going to say, and there was also I think a sort of like citation from the Arkansas legislature, congratulating him on his 100th birthday and naming a number of his many achievements, including the donation of his Spirit of 76 game to the Pacific Pinball Museum.
Oh, they already have games enough. Why would they need that one?
Well, there's always that one more special one, isn't there, to add to the collection?
Yeah, well, okay.
And who knows? Perhaps he'll have a starring role in the next show in Lodi next.
Yeah,
next
but
year.
if they take that game away from him, then what's he gonna do at home? The pinball game that he has at home is the only thing that sort of keeps him going to the garage and play some pinball. If they take that game away as well, what's going to happen? The guy is going to be watching TV in his chair, and that's it. No, I'm serious. They shouldn't take that game away.
Well, he donated it, presumably. So, but I don't know whether they've actually got it yet, or whether that's kind of in perpetuity.
Well, I hope they let him keep it until he really no longer needs it.
Well, we'll see what happens about that. But the important thing was to mark such an amazing milestone, reaching 100, and celebrating his career in pinball in such an impressive and an enjoyable way. From what I saw of everything that happened there.
Right. So, and well, if people don't know, in the upcoming Pinball Magazine number 5, you can read all about Wayne's accomplishments in the industry of pinball and way beyond.
Excellent. Okay.
When we finally go to
probably
print.
know about that.
Yeah. So.
Okay, moving on then. So this past month, after much stalling and cancelled announcements, Chicago Gaming finally admitted. It's probably better to say that than announced, but they admitted that Monster Bash was indeed their third remake title.
Right. And
it came about in a rather unusual way, not their traditional way of announcing games.
No.
The first two, anyway. Do you want to describe exactly what happened there, Jonathan?
Well, what basically happened is that they posted on, I think their Facebook it was, that they were in the process of getting the certifications for UL and CE for their third remake. And then, I don't remember who it was, but someone on Pinside started to looked up their UL certifications that were listed for Chicago Gaming, and there it was printed clearly Monster Bash in 3 different models. So then the cat was out of the bag, and the next day Chicago Gaming probably did the best damage control that they could do, basically by admitting, okay, you guys, you caught us, and we're confirming that Monster Bash is indeed the third remake, and hoping that the excitement for the game will still be as big once they are ready to show the game with the extras that they are currently working on.
Yeah, it was a bit of a sort of lame way of announcing it, rather than sort of any kind of.
I thought it was rather amusing, actually.
It was amusing, and you almost wonder whether that kind of thing was intended. But it still lacked the sort of punch of a big reveal of the game. Just what they wanted to do, of course, all along. Is why they claimed that they were delaying the announcement because they wanted to have all the games ready to display, and in fact they haven't got any of the games ready to display at this time.
Right. But at least, okay, so we know it's coming, but we still don't know what the extras will be for the limited edition and the
special
edition or special edition, whatever they call it. So,
yeah.
Of course, we know there will be the big color display like we've seen on Attack from Mars. That shouldn't be a surprise. But then the question is, what are they planning to do for a topper? I guess that's it. I'm not sure whether I don't think they will be enhancing gameplay in any ways, although they could probably, but I have no idea. But we'll just have to wait and see when they are ready to reveal what extras they have been working on. And of course, they have been raising the bar pretty high so far, so they better come up with something else. It's going to be disappointing to anybody.
Yeah, well, one company who were in a position to reveal their game was a brand new company based in South Wales, and they are the company is called JOR Games, and the brand with which they will be producing their pinball games, and including their first one in this, is called Team Pinball.
Right.
And you and I were both there. What was it, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Thank you to, I have to say thank you to Team Pinball for flying me in to be part of the presentation. So you and I, we both played the game. What was very impressive is this is a startup company and they already have 10 games ready to ship.
Yeah, indeed. There was when I first went there a couple of months back, and sort of wandered in, or they showed me into the room where they've been building these games, or I thought they'd just been designing the games, but then to go in and they open the door and there's 10 almost mechanically complete games sitting there in 2 rows. It's quite a sight when you didn't even know these games existed, and they do look very. They look very, very nicely finished. The artwork is the quality of the printing is very good. The mechanical construction of the game looks good.
I like the artwork too. I have to admit that it looks
totally
very
custom
nice.
artwork.
It's a very interesting approach for pinball to use artwork in such a. I don't know what the style is to describe it, but I think it looks good.
So let's just backtrack and mention that the game is called The Mafia. It is an EM style. It's a modern take on an EM style game. So it's single level playfield, no ramps, no real big toys on the game, just basic. What we consider staples of most games these days. Pop bumpers, spinners, or a spinner, stand-up targets. 2 flippers, 2 slingshots, 3 top rollover lanes.
Single ball, no multi-ball?
Yeah, no multi-ball. Yeah, it's a real throwback game.
It does have a captive ball, though.
It does indeed, yes. And, orbit, lanes left and right.
That's about it.
LED lighting throughout. The playfield is... the artwork on the playfield is actually done on an overlay, which rather than printing directly onto the wood, which should, in theory, give them increased durability and make it more easily replaceable if they need to.
Right.
It actually comes on a printed sheet, which has a protective cover over it. So in some pictures, you might see a kind of a little wrinkling somewhere where they've cut the protective cover, but the idea being that when the game arrives at the customer's house, they can pull the protective sheet off the playfield, and there it is, pristine, with no marks or dust or anything on it.
Right.
All that can be done in the factory if that's what the buyer prefers.
Right. So, and I was very impressed with their effort, and especially I'm not that much of a technical guy, but the whole thing is basically driven by a Raspberry Pi and a single PCB that they designed themselves, and that's basically everything the game needs.
Pretty much. You've got power supplies.
Yeah, but still you get all the modern features like you got audio and music playing and all that, and voice calls. You have the RGB LEDs. Throughout the whole playfield, so apparently it doesn't take that much to create a platform that supports that.
Oh, and also there's a 10.1 inch LCD display in the back box, which the Raspberry Pi also drives.
Right.
So it's a very simple processor. It's ubiquitous, readily available if anything goes wrong with it to replace it, and cheap to replace, and as you said, a single driver board to deal with the inputs, outputs, and drive the lamps and the solenoids.
Right. So
the game only has a single speaker. I should mention that in the base of the cabinet. No back box speakers, but the back box is where the LCD display is.
Right. So I played the game honestly. Maybe because it was the only game playing that I was playing, but the audio sounded just fine to me. It wasn't. I wasn't missing like speakers in the back box.
No, I thought it was maybe sort of lacking a little bit in the top end, but not too bad considering you were able to hear everything that was going on without any problem.
Right, and the game does have a soundtrack of its own, which they sourced out to a company in America, and you might be more familiar with what style to call it. I would call it like this piano sort of...
sort of ragtime, I would call it.
Yeah.
When we played it, there were limited number of voice calls, but more were being recorded that very weekend.
Right.
And I think you had some input as well into possible voice calls that could go into the game.
Right. So with the game being themed around the Mafia, what they did was they recorded a lot of famous voice calls from classic Mafia movies or TV shows or whatever that sort of get an appearance in the game in a sort of funny way. So it's an original theme that is borrowing heavily from licensed themes, which in a way is amusing, I would say.
You're almost trying to name the movie or the TV series that the voice call came from.
Right. So, but I like that kind of stuff. It does. While the game does not remind me at all of something like Medieval Madness, that humor of trying to use such voice calls, that sort of does remind me to like a game that also used to do that. And Medieval Madness sort of reminds of Monty Python. So in a sense, you can see where that comparison is coming from, although it is completely two different games. But I do like their approach to that. So
yeah, and they've come out. They produced the first 10 production games, and said, here they are. If you want to buy them, and then if you buy them, we make some more. They're not taking any money up front. There's no pre-orders and any of this. You can see the game. They'll be taking it to a number of pinball shows this autumn. Certainly the UK Pinball, UK Pinfest, they will be there. I know that.
Right.
And I think there's some other shows they're going to. I think there's a show in France. They're also taking the Mafia too.
Right.
Beyond that, I don't know. It's probably a little early for them to make the arrangements for shows further afield.
Right.
But who knows? Maybe they'll end up in. Maybe they'll have some games for Expo. Maybe they'll have something next year in the US. It's certainly an interesting game, and it's an interesting design, and probably unexpected, I think, in many ways. You think any new company coming out now with a pinball game would try and throw in all the bells and whistles and make it as complex and as full features as you possibly can. But they've started off, as they said, they're walking before they start running with their first game, and it's the idea being it's a solid. What you see is what you get. Modern take on an EM game, and in that regard, I think they've achieved what they set out to do.
Right. So it's an interesting take, and I hope that they will be successful, so that they can make a second game, which will be more fully featured, so to speak. And I just hope that they get to do more pinball. That would be great.
Absolutely, yeah. More pinball is always good, and new ideas and new manufacturing techniques as well come out of new startup companies. There are plenty of smaller companies out there, and it's good to see another one add to that list and doing things in a different way.
Right. So if we move on to one of the bigger, smaller companies, if you want to call it that, Jersey Jack Pinball finally started production of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes, absolutely. The first production games were on the line, and were presumably off the line as well when they were completed. I haven't seen any pictures of the finished games, so I still haven't seen anything with a single disc in it yet. Have you seen that?
Well, I saw a picture of a game on the line, and it does have a single disc. I have no idea whether the artwork, it wasn't detailed enough to see whether the artwork is as detailed as it was on the 3 discs. But we'll have to see how that turns out once they're ready to show pictures. I still think it's a pity that it's no longer the 3 spinning discs, because that was like the eye-catching thing to the players. Although I understood that the design team figured that the eye catcher on the game would be the rocking ship with the second playfield, but oh well. I'm
But
still
there are plenty of things on the playfield on there still. So it is a shame that that's not in there, and it was an innovative feature that we hadn't seen on any other game.
right.
But ultimately, it proved a little too innovative, and they couldn't actually get it to work. So yes, we're back to the single disc. But yeah, there's a whole lot going on in that game. So the loss of that one thing is not too bad, although it obviously will detract from people's enjoyment or expectations of the game. But there is, there's apart from the rocking ship, there's also the LCD display at the bottom with the compass, and the disc is still a spinning disc. It just spins a different way now.
Right. So it still will be interesting to see how Jersey Jack Pinball will move forward. I mean, obviously this game has been heavily delayed, and I'm not so sure whether they could keep the production line going all the time with just Dialed In and some Hobbits and Wizard of Oz games. So I'm assuming, and that's just an assumption, that they really need to start cranking out pirate games in order to stay healthy as a company. Let's call it that.
Oh, I assume that's definitely the case. Yes. No company can really afford to have a game which doesn't sell. And Pirates has been around. Well, it was launched, almost a year ago now.
Yeah, October last year.
Yes, at Expo. Well, at least it was announced at that point and shown. Yeah. And here we are. What are we? 10 months later, and the first games are going out. That's not really a sustainable model either, and I think everybody knows that. And they are certainly pushing forward with the plans to be much more in a position to ship games when they announce them. So I don't think we'll be seeing an announcement of the next game at this year's Expo.
I would be very surprised if they did. Then again, we already know what it's going to be, but that's a different story.
Yeah, well, there's knowing what the title is and knowing what the game is. It's different things, of course.
True. So, but congratulations to Jersey Jack for finally getting Pirates on the line, and now let's just hope that it will be a massive success and a fun game to play.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing how the production version plays.
Right.
Okay, so one of the other, I would say, smaller but smaller companies then, as you call them. What about Spooky Pinball? Because they've had some, I guess, bad news this time.
I guess you could call it bad news. This Week in Pinball mentioned there was a bidding war going on for the Godzilla license, and Charlie just addressed it in the monthly Spooky Pinball podcast, which I recommend everybody to check out as well. Go to spookypinball.com and you will find it there. It's episode 101. What it basically came down to is that Charlie and Katie went to the licensing expo in Las Vegas, where they had a meeting with Toho, who is the license holder for Godzilla. Apparently, in that meeting, they were interrupted by someone from Stern walking in unannounced and not being welcome to that meeting, of course. And Stern went after the Godzilla license as well, and basically Toho told Spooky at some point, like, sorry, but we got another offer and we're going with that. Something like that happened. And it was immediately, I think Robert Mueller from Deeproot did some researching, and he quickly found out that Stern Pinball was the party that secured the license. What is interesting, which Charlie also notes in his podcast, is that Godzilla is not Iron Maiden, or it's not Metallica, or it's not Ghostbusters, or Guardians of the Galaxy. It's not a big license world. It's a worldwide known theme, but there's not any movies attached to it right now that are drawing in millions and millions of people, which is sort of what Stern usually uses licenses. They need the audience, the familiarity of a certain license to appeal to millions and millions of people in order to sell thousands and thousands of games. And here we're talking about a license that Spooky at best could have sold 500 games of, and I don't think Stern will do a much better job. Stern admitted that they got the license and they basically said, well, that's just business, which is a nice way of saying, like, screw you.
Yeah, basically.
We just don't want you to have it, which is, okay. They are in a position where they can do it, but it's not a nice gesture. What actually was a nice gesture is that Charlie and his son Bug offered to consult with Stern in order to make sure that the game becomes a very good game. I'm not sure whether Stern will take them up on that, but I think it's a nice gesture from them, and it shows them certainly shows who is the bigger man. I'm also, well, you can still wonder, like, okay, sure, Stern gets the license, but it doesn't mean that they are going to make the game. I mean, there's always an excuse that you can say, like, oh, sorry, we didn't get to that, or whatever. They just took the license off the market in order to make sure that Spooky didn't get it.
That would be a rather unkind and unreasonable thing to do. But, I don't think we have any evidence of Stern having done that in the past, have we?
I know there have been bidding wars between Stern and Jersey Jack. We haven't discussed them much, but obviously, I think certain. If I recall correctly, I think Star Wars was supposed to be a Jersey Jack game, and then eventually Stern managed to outbid Jersey Jack, while the license originally already was confirmed with Jersey Jack, and then
yes,
they lost the license.
That's correct.
Yes,
but again, that did lead to a Star Wars game being produced by Stern.
Yeah, well, but Star Wars is not Godzilla. I can see why they would be going the extra mile to make a Star Wars game, regardless of what you think of that game. But Godzilla, they might just take that off the market just to make sure that the collectors don't spend their money on a Spooky game, but rather spend it on a Stern game.
Yeah, I guess so. It'd be nice to think that kind of thing isn't happening, but we'll find out in due course.
Well, it's an industry, so it is happening, and unfortunately. So, and if you're the big player in the industry, then you get to defend your yard, I guess.
Okay. Well, slightly more positive stuff from Stern as well this time. They've been producing some code updates for the games Batman, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Star Wars.
Right. So, and they also did go to CominCon in San Diego with quite a number of games. I think they had like 6 games on the show floor, and then they had in the Marriott there was a special area where people could play Iron Maiden. Jack Danger was hosting tournaments there, and people who managed to put up a high score got into some sort of final, and they gave quite a lot of prizes away.
Yeah, and Stern also had a pretty impressive display at the Replay FX show alongside Pinburgh, the Pinburgh tournament, with a very nice looking stand with sort of wire forms and sort of pop bumpers, and it really stood out, I think, amongst even with a show with that many pinball machines and video games set up. Stern made a big impression, I think.
Yeah, well, good for them. So obviously they have learned over the years how to make a big impression at shows. I think we've seen the setup that they used at Pinburgh. I think that's sort of like the same booth that they have been using at Amusement Expo as well, and some other shows. But usually at the pinball shows, they don't use that booth because they team up with Marco Specialties and they sort of organize everything. So But it's nice to see that they moved that booth to Pinburgh and Replay Effects. And speaking of which, congratulations to Stern pinball designer Keith Elwin for winning Pinburgh.
Yeah, an amazing display in the final there. A well-deserved victory, I would say.
Right.
He was consistent through the tournament, and that carried on into the final. So it's hardly a surprise when Keith wins a major tournament like that, but still gratifying to see that he's maintaining his high level of pinball play despite holding out a full-time job in the business.
Right. So no, I'm just happy for him that he's still on a consistent role as a player, and congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to a different company then. I think you got some news from your side of the the North Sea from me and the Atlantic from some of the other listeners to this podcast. Right. Dutch Pinball. Some happenings over there.
Well, I'm not sure whether there's something happening. Basically, they sent out a newsletter, and I think first, I don't have it in front of me, but first part of the newsletter was that their lawyers are going on holiday until the end of August. So much for things happening, because that basically means that there's not happening anything. Since basically we're waiting for lawyers to talk to each other. But the reason why they mentioned was that they apparently wrote a defense of over 140 pages. And as a result, the lawyer of their former contract manufacturer, ARA, suggested to meet after their holiday to discuss whether there is some settlement possible, something like that. Now, some people got enthusiastic, and I think even Dutch Pinball themselves sort of hinted that there might be a possibility that ARA might be willing to start production again. I seriously have my doubts about that. I just think ARA wants to get rid of the parts that they have in stock and move on and never look back. But I don't see them turning 180 degrees and all of a sudden becoming their favorite new contract manufacturer, and sure, we're building all the games. So the other thing that was in the same newsletter is basically Dutch Pinball announced that they are not able to refund anybody who already paid in full because they're basically low on financials. And if you knowing that, then you might wonder, like, okay, so what's going to happen next? They're not going to spend all their money on a lawyer, I guess, even though they might have a strong case, but still. And even if their former contract manufacturer wants to settle, even if they settle with where they are just giving back the parts to Dutch Pinball, and then they still need to be assembled and there's no money. So we're still looking at a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did try to do this, was it a GoFundMe campaign?
Well, actually, that wasn't Dutch Pinball. That was initiated by people who are a couple of early achievers, as they call them, people who are paid in full on the pre-order model, who wanted to support Dutch Pinball.
The so-called Seattle 7.
Yes, which has nothing to do with people from Seattle.
No.
And basically, they started this campaign. I mentioned last month in our podcast that I knew that was coming up, and I didn't think that they thought it through very much. And basically what happened is the whole thing got shut down on Pinball massively, and after 3 or 4 days, basically the GoFundMe campaign was cancelled. I think some people got a refund. They only collected like $750 of the $500,000 that they were looking for. And even $500,000 was like a number that I don't think is sufficient enough to save Dutch Pinball at the moment.
No, I'm sure that it would take quite a lot more than that to get. I mean, the whole campaign was really just to pay for lawyers, wasn't it?
Well, that was the idea, but still, I was missing all the. There was nothing to it to say like, oh yes, sure, I want to support this. There was a lack of back information or information for people who want to know what's going on exactly. And
yeah, it was a very, very poorly written and poorly described campaign in the first place,
right.
and
So,
with no clear goals and no clear definition of exactly how the money would be spent, or I don't know. It seemed like a non-starter to me, and as you say, it didn't last long.
Right. So now the interesting thing is, I still believe that Dutch Pinball might be able to pull it off, but they will need either a bank loan or an investor stepping in or something. But I did some math based on numbers that are completely taken out of thin air. But based on that, I still say, yes, this can work. The game is good and the demand for the game is certainly there. But they need to go into production to make money. You can't survive as a company just by sitting with your arms crossed and waiting for lawyers to talk to each other, as has been the case. Obviously, they have been doing their homework in the sense that they wrote a defense for themselves in which they probably put all their cards on the table, in which they showed the lawyers of ARA, look, this is all the documentation that we saved over the years. We can prove you're wrong on this, on this, on this, on this, on this, and this. And hopefully, possibly, the ARA lawyers realize, like, okay, if we take this to court, then we might have a very bad case and they might end up winning. So that's why they might want to meet, like, okay, let's not go get this far, but then the question is, how much loss is ARA willing to take in order to just walk away from the whole thing and leave Dutch Pinball to figure it out themselves? Because that's, I think, what will happen in the end. And then the question is, can Dutch Pinball figure it out themselves? Because then they still need a big money injection, so to speak, in order to get production going. And based on the math that I did, you can't. It would be very optimistic to think like, oh, we're going to start producing 50 games, and with the money that we make on 50 games, we can then build 75 games, and then we can build 100. No, it's not working like that, because if you're going to manufacture games in China, the Chinese will say, you order parts for 500 games or else we're not even talking to you. Or the parts get so incredibly expensive that the whole math doesn't add up anymore, and it's basically not worth it to building 50 games because they become too expensive in the first place.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable, but it does seem that thus far ARA's strategy has been to bankrupt Dutch Pinball by protracting it, the whole thing, and using up all resources that Dutch Pinball might have on lawyers and legal fees, to the point where they're not actually able to produce the game with Zytec, because they haven't got that Zytec want the money up front in order to build the games. I'm sure they're not willing to go on this, we'll sell 2 new ones and we make 1 old one policy for a long time without getting the orders up front. So I don't know. It's interesting that ARA are interested in talking. You think they just wait for Dutch to run out of money?
Well, the thing is, even if Zytec would be willing to start making games, they would be saying like, okay, but we're going to have to order parts for 500 games. Who is going to pay for those? Because they are a contract manufacturer. They're not a financer.
That's right.
So even if Dutch Pinball wants to go into production, basically they need to find the funds to order the parts for the games that they want to be building. Even if ARA would give back all the parts and say like, take this crap away from us and you figure it out yourself, they would have to find someone to put it together, and they don't have the money to do that anymore. So they will need a financial injection of some sort. The good news is, if you have the money to invest in Dutch pinball, there's money to be made because they have a hit game on their hands, and as soon as they are able to start producing the games finally, they will sell. I'm very confident of that. So there is a big opportunity for people who would love to invest, but as long as the whole ARA court case thing is still going on, nobody is going to.
I think that's true. Yeah. Okay. So nothing happening there until the end of this month now.
Right.
So maybe in the next month's podcast we might have a little update on that, or a little inkling of exactly how that meeting went.
Right. Well, the question still is, even once that meeting happens, at the current pace, I think the lawyers of ARA and Dutch Pinball are talking to each other like every 6 weeks. So even if they have a meeting, most likely what will happen is they will confirm that they had a meeting, and then you won't hear something for a couple of weeks because they need to discuss internally what are we going to do. So you might not hear something for 6 months, and then it's like, okay, we heard back and we got an offer and we said no. That's most likely what we're looking at. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but chances are one of the parties is not going to agree with the others, and especially if Dutch Pinball is very confident that they have a strong case, but no money, then if they would go to court and court would rule in their favor, then what would they end up with? That's the question. Because if the court says, yes, you got screwed by this contract manufacturer and they have to reimburse you for all the bad street credibility that you got from their behavior, yada, 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 I still don't think they're going to make millions on that because it's the Netherlands, it's not America. So then the question still remains, even if they win in court, what do they win aside from it being a matter of principle and still you have no money?
Yeah, and that's even assuming they can afford to go to court in the first place.
Well, that's another thing. But okay, if a court might rule in their favor, but it could take years, and that takes money. And well, then you're playing right up ARA's strategy, like you said, to just bankrupt them.
That's it. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll hang fire on that and see what happens. So we mentioned earlier about code updates for games, but also some new ColorDMD titles have been released,
yes,
or at least announced. Do you want to tell us about those?
Last Action Hero, I think, has been released by now, and announced has been Slugfest, which is a pinball pitch and bet game. Yeah,
a bit of a surprise, that one. It's the first non-pinball title ColorDMD have done, isn't it?
Yeah, but it is a game designed by Mark Ritchie, and you can read all about it in Pinball Magazine number 4. Mark Ritchie actually did 2 pitch and bet games while he was designing for Williams. And the second one, he probably went as far as he could go with a designer, and it was at that time the first game with a dot matrix to come out of Williams, even before Gilligan's Island, which was the first pinball with a dot matrix.
So historically significant, then.
Yes, and. Oh well,
but one of the later games to get to ColorDMD. I guess not that many of them around.
Well, the funny thing is, most of the American shows where I go to, there's always a Slugfest somewhere. So the game is still around, and people have it, and so there might be a small market for people who want to upgrade that game.
We'll be interested to see it then. Hopefully next time you see it at a show, it'll have a ColorDMD in it, and we can draw our own conclusions as to how good that looks.
Right. Okay. And then we have one final topic to discuss.
Yeah.
Which is a very recent announcement by Tim Arnold from the Pinball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, done in a typically Tim way, which got picked up by a few news outlets who got kind of the wrong end of the stick after only reading the first line of his announcement, and then sort of launched off and saying the Pinball Hall of Fame is going to close, which is their headline, which was also Tim's headline, but
he followed with
announcing it's closing because it's moving to a brand new location, actually on the Las Vegas Strip, just with a plot which they have just recently purchased. It doesn't actually have a building on it yet, so they've got to build the new home, but they have bought this this long strip of land to the, I think it's the south end of the strip.
Right.
Just beyond Mandalay Bay, and just before the world's largest Harley-Davidson franchise, and very close to the sign the iconic sign, the Welcome to Las Vegas sign, which everybody seems to want to stop and take pictures of.
Yeah, but that's really out of Las Vegas. That's like you're still on the freeway almost there.
Kind of, yeah. There certainly is a central median there where with trees and things. So it won't be visible entirely in one direction. So they're going to need to get a big sign put up to show it is the Pinball Hall of Fame.
Right.
So it'll draw people in. But it is right. It just backs onto the airport there, and it should be a lot more accessible than the current location on Tropicana, which is, Tim says, is 3.2 miles from the Strip.
Right.
And he sees that as something which deters a lot of potential visitors to the Hall of Fame.
Well, I think you made an interesting comparison, saying that the cab ride the money that people pay for a cab ride is probably more than they spend inside the Pinball Hall of Fame, because all the games are on a quarter. Or at least most of the
the older games are, certainly. Yes. And he does say that the reduced fares from Uber and companies like that have helped getting people in at a more reasonable price. But still, if you know something over 3 miles away from the Strip, and a lot of people, I would guess, who are potential visitors there, just don't really want to go that far from the Strip. They just sort of go up and down and go to the casinos there and the restaurants and marvel at the various attractions on there. And if you suggest to someone they need to go or get a taxi ride or hop on a bus and take a long ride to get to the Pinball Hall of Fame, they'll opt to do something more locally instead. Right. So this is a good move for him.
But is it still walking distance from the Strip? That's the big question, because I know where the sign is, and that's not a place where you would walk up from the Strip, because that's just too far.
Well, I guess people do go to the Harley-Davidson dealership down there, which apparently earns more money from merchandise sales than it does from bike sales.
Right.
So that's a very popular attraction. So I guess if they're going that far, then that they will pass the Pinball Hall of Fame on the way.
A big sign will be needed, because what you don't want is people driving out of town like, oh, right, there was the Pinball Hall of Fame, we should have gone to that. And then, oh, well, now we're on our way out.
Yeah, an interesting little tie-in, actually, I was thinking of earlier with Harley-Davidson, because that was one of the companies that Dave Peterson Hegarty Company, helped turn around earlier on before they got involved in Stern Pinball.
Right.
And that was where Dave Peterson sort of learned the business of financial restructuring.
Right. And to continue on that, inside at Stern, or internally at Stern, they still refer to the Harley-Davidson model for their own games. There's a big similarity, and they are really applying that. I talked to Gary Stern, was it last month, this month? I'm not even sure anymore. No, it was this month. Gary Stern and Doug Score, who recently switched from Chicago Gaming to Stern Pinball, did a European trip to introduce DocScore to Stern's distributors here in Europe, as Gary is stepping down a little bit and he wants to travel less internationally and all that kind of stuff. So I was able to do an interview with Gary Stern, which will be published in Pinball Magazine number 5. And in that interview, he referenced a couple of times the Harley-Davidson model as the three-legged stool as we all know it. But even for Harley, it's like, okay, you got your professional users, you got your rec room users, and there's the collectors. So in that sense, Stern is applying the same model, and it's working out for them pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just a little tie in there with Harley Davidson. Of course, there's Harley Davidson pins, so you can imagine
several.
The Hall of Fame might sort of go knocking on the Harley Davidson dealership's door and say, "Oh, by the way, we've got all these Harley Davidson pins here. You might be interested in."
Right.
And they do a kind of tie up and to put machines donated by the Pinball Hall of Fame just up the street. And maybe get some of that traffic as well.
So now I'm curious. I read the whole thing, but I didn't understand most. I understood most of it, but there's a fundraiser going on.
There is a fundraiser because although the Hall of Fame, the Las Vegas Pinball Collectors Club, who run it, have built up a sizable cash account from their running of the Hall of Fame as it is now, that wasn't enough to actually buy the plot of land outright. They needed a bridging loan of around about $1 million, and that obviously attracts interest all the time it exists. So they need to pay that down as quickly as possible, so they're not paying the money on interest anymore. And then they obviously need to start building up a fund to build the building on the new plot, because at the moment there's nothing there, and that will probably take $2 million to build the home that they want. And of course, in the meantime, they need to keep the existing place running, so it's not like they can sell that straight away and get the money to build the new building, because they need to have two buildings running for a while they do the transition from Tropicana to the Strip, and then once they've done that, they can sell the current location and use that to pay off the cost of the new building.
Right.
So that's why they're doing this fundraiser of selling memberships to the Las Vegas Pinball Collector Club for varying amounts and getting varying rewards for doing that. But the key thing is to support the Pinball Hall of Fame in their move to a new, bigger, and it will be at least 3 times the size of their current location.
Wow.
Their new home. I think they've probably got the machines to go in there. Exactly how they're going to deal with the maintenance issues.
Well, that's the key thing, because a lot of people who have been to the Pinball Hall of Fame, and no disrespect to Tim Arnold, but a lot of people are complaining, okay, so I play this EM game for 25 cents, but the flippers are weak, or this or that's not working, and that's, if you're working with volunteers like Tim is, then you obviously don't get trained pinball technicians. So you can train people maybe to do some of the easy tasks, but you really need games to be playing in good condition. And the problem with pinball machines is, even if you have them working in good condition today, that doesn't mean that they will be playing in good condition next week.
No, because a place that size and with a higher profile location is going to attract more visitors. That's the whole point of the move. So yes, the games are, especially the more popular games, are going to get played even more than they are now.
Right.
So I think a serious rethink about exactly how they deal with that and how they run the place is probably well overdue. They've done an amazing job to get to this point, but this is a significantly different operation if it's 3 times the size.
Right. Well, currently they have like 200 games in at the Tropicana address right now. And that's already difficult enough to maintain technically. I mean, I remember talking to Tim a couple of years ago where he's basically complaining how much time it takes him to empty the cash boxes from all the games. That takes up so much of his time, and he can't do any repairs during that time. But he doesn't trust anybody else to do it because he's afraid that they might run with the quarters. So,
yeah, that's what I mean. It needs a real rethink about how the place is run when you're dealing with that volume of customers and cash flow.
Right. I do have to say, I'm always surprised, even if you go on a Tuesday morning to the Pinball Hall of Fame, there's still 40, 50 people in there anytime it's open. And seriously, that's just amazing to me. I mean, they hardly hardly any advertising or whatsoever. It's just big one yellow sign, Pinball Hall of Fame, and people manage to find it. And it's and 30, 40 people in there any time of day, and that's impressive. I mean,
it is. There's certainly a dedicated hardcore of people who are there all the time. I went there several times on my last trip, and I did see some of the same faces day in, day out. So it seems like people have a kind of routine almost that, get up, have breakfast, have a coffee, go to the Hall of Fame, and then do whatever else they're going to do, whether they go to work or on vacation and they go to other attractions.
Well, I do have to say, the Pinball Hall of Fame is probably the cheapest amusement you will find in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
and
true.
And probably, if you're into pinball, probably also the most fun. But so with the new location being like 3 times the size of the current one, I don't think, and I certainly don't hope that Tim is intending to put there 600 games, because that would be it would be insane in a good and a bad way, because try maintaining 600 games. That's going to drive you crazy.
Well, there's no point moving to a bigger location unless you can put more machines in there.
Sure, but 600 would be like...
500 maybe. It's going to be 3 times the size, unless they're going to start doing other things, or subletting some of the space out to other companies to get some income that way, or maybe doing sort of lectures and training areas and that kind of thing,
or business events or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a sort of corporate area or party area where you put a selection of games in there, maybe duplicates that you have, which could be hired out, which would otherwise not be on the floor because they wouldn't have 2 of the same games on the floor. But if they put them in a different room with dedicated access, then that could be a good fundraiser too.
Right. So, well, I do wish Tim best of luck. And do support his fundraiser, because I would love to see this happen and get them to move to this new location, and preferably without a large depth that keeps increasing because of the interest. So please do support this initiative.
Details of the fundraiser are on Tim's Facebook post for the Pinball Hall of Fame, and also on the story on Pinball News site, which gives the details of the fundraiser too, as well as some history of the Pinball Hall of Fame's locations.
Right. So I guess that's this wraps up our summary for July 2018. Any specific highlights coming up this month?
Ooh, now put me on the spot there. This month being August.
We got the UK Pin Fest.
Some shows. Yes, I say there's some shows coming up. UK Pin Fest, where Home Pin will be there. Mike will be there as well, showing Thunderbirds game and doing a seminar all about it as well, which will be streamed live. Details will appear on the UK Pin Fest website, and also. Dennis will be there as well with his Kill Bill game, and he'll be doing a talk about exactly how he and the others in his team made that game from World Cup Soccer.
Excellent.
Other than that, I'm sure there are other shows. I should look at the diary on Pinball News and confirm it all. But other than that, we're not expecting... Are we expecting any announcement? Yes, I think maybe we are expecting an announcement from Stern Pinball this month.
Actually, people have been speculating. We might see the reveal or the announcement for Deadpool.
Yes, that's what everybody's expecting. And so far, most of these expectations have turned out to be right. So if that is indeed the case, then Deadpool, the George Gomez design, will be announced at some point during August.
Right, I don't see it. Well, the thing is this. Stern obviously have a winner on their hand with Iron Maiden. So as long as they are cranking out Iron Maidens and selling them, there's not really a need for them to start production on Deadpool.
No, absolutely not. But they do. I'm sure they have a schedule that they want to hit. If they're doing a couple of reveals at Pinball Expo in October, they need to give some breathing space between announcements.
Right. So
they don't want to announce Deadpool in like September and then a month later announce 2 more titles.
Well,
because that won't give Deadpool much of a day in the sun.
One of the things that sort of got confirmed by Joe CominCon in I think it was a head-to-head pinball podcast is that one of the Kapow titles that was originally scheduled to be released at Expo is now scheduled for January, and that would be Beatles. So at Expo, Stern is only going to reveal one new game, Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
So Deadpool and Monsters might still be close together, and even who knows, Stern might even say like, hey, if we're selling this many Iron Maidens, let's just keep on selling them, and we'll do Deadpool at Expo, and we move Monsters to January, and Beatles can wait. Well, I doubt that, but in theory they could. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, true. Yeah, they do have that flexibility in their production, but it could mean they end up with other designers, or designers on other teams and other team members as well.
Right.
Not.
I am pretty confident
sitting there twiddling their thumbs, wondering what they're going to do next when their title, which they finished ages ago, is still not on the line.
Usually, the extra time for designers is usually a good thing, especially for the programmers involved, because I think especially what happened with Iron Maiden is hopefully the model of the future for Stern Pinball, in the sense that they present a game that is within a couple of weeks after being announced already at Software Code 1.0, and not waiting 2 years to be completed, but and immediately shipping the game. They announced the game and shipping within a week.
That's how Stern roll, and that's how other companies are trying to emulate as far as their production schedules go, with varying degrees of success. But announce the game and take orders and ship them within the week or very soon after. Yeah, right. But anyway, that's what we're looking forward to in this month.
Right. So I'm trying to think.
I can't think of anything else.
Well, I know that Jack Danger did stream Alice Cooper from the Spooky headquarters, and there was also a stream of Cosmic Kart Racing. I think it was on the Buffalo Pinball streaming channel. But there's not much news to report on that, other than that those games are in production. Jerry Stellenberg did announce that all orders have been fulfilled for the P3, which means that it's a good thing. Not sure whether that also means that they don't have any orders to fulfill, whether that's a good sign.
Yes, I was wondering that as well. Does that mean that they're not actually making any more then at the moment?
That could be. To be honest, I haven't been that well informed, so that's something that we might have to cut back to next month. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we did say we're going to wrap this up fairly quickly, so let's do that. Thank you very much for listening to this combined Pinball Magazine and Pinball News monthly update podcast. I'll wish you all the best until the next time, and I'll give the closing words over to Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Martin. Always a pleasure doing this podcast with you. Both of us will be attending the UK Pin Fest later this month. So in case you happen to be over there, do come say hi. We'll both be there. And if else, who knows, we might run into each other at another show, and then we look forward to seeing you there. So until then, thank you and bye-bye.
And goodbye.